Today we're clearing up a common rules question in Magic, the difference between triggered abilities and activated abilities. Here's a shortcut you can use to identify these. If you see a colon breaking up two lines of text, then it's an activated ability. These are written as cost::effect. If the text starts with the words when, whenever, or at, then it's a triggered ability. Let's dive into more detail about each of these and start with activated abilities. Like I just mentioned, they have a colon that separates the cost and the effect. Everything before the colon is the cost. Costs can be mana, tap, sacrifice, discard, pay life, or any combination of things. Most activated abilities use the stack, with one important exception. Mana abilities, which are abilities that add mana and have no target, don't use the stack. They resolve immediately, and you keep priority. On screen, you'll see very common examples of mana abilities. If you aren't sure if you're dealing with a mana ability, ask yourself if the ability adds mana to your mana pool, or if it does something else. If the answer is the latter, then the effect will go onto the stack after you've paid the cost. Understanding how you pay costs can unlock some really powerful synergies. You're probably familiar with the concept of summoning sickness. Summoning sickness means a creature can't attack or activate abilities with the tap symbol until you've controlled it since your most recent turn began, or it has haste. This is why you usually can't tap your classic mana dorks on the turn you play them. But tapping creatures as part of paying another card's cost is different. Consider Relic of Legends, which has tap an untapped legendary creature as its cost, and the effect is adding 1 mana of any colour. You can't tap Codsworth, Handy Helper, for 2 white mana the turn you play it. But you can tap it using Relic of Legends to add 1 mana. Tapping it is a cost to activate the relic, not a cost associated with the creature itself, so even a Summoning Sick Legend can be tapped for it. The logic lets Summoning Sick creatures pay crew, convoke, and station costs. Contrast this with Cryptolith Rite, which grants a mana ability to your creatures. Because it's giving the mana ability to your creatures themselves, the normal summoning sickness requirements apply. This is a nuance that can take time to identify. Ask yourself, am I using an activated ability of the creature itself, or am I simply tapping the creature to pay another cost? If it's the latter, then you don't have to worry about summoning sickness. Staying on the topic of summoning sickness for a moment, you should also know that costs can be paid at instant speed. Of course, timing restrictions noted on the card and summoning sickness still apply, but costs that don't require a creature to tap, like those found on Viscera Seer or Warren Soul Trader, are instant speed activations. I play a Ratadrabic deck with a lot of these instant speed activation abilities, and it's very resilient and hard to deal with because of it. If an opponent tries to exile one of my creatures, I just activate these costs in response to send the creatures to the graveyard, instead of allowing them to be exiled. Let's look at a scenario where understanding costs really matters. Suppose you're playing white. You've just dumped every creature in your hand onto the board, and the next player casts a board wipe on their turn. You can still tap your summoning sick creatures to pay the convoke cost of Clever Concealment, because tapping them is the cost of the spell, and not any cost associated with creatures themselves. So it doesn't matter if they have summoning sickness or not. If you don't understand this distinction, then you've probably just lost the game. Now let's turn and talk about triggered abilities. While activated abilities are things that you, the player, choose to activate, the game handles triggered abilities and automatically puts them onto the stack. Triggered abilities use 3 words: when, whenever, and at. Whenever the relevant event happens, the game puts the triggered ability's effect onto the stack the next time a player receives priority. If the trigger targets, you choose targets when it goes on the stack. If it says the word may, then you decide on resolution. Now that we understand the differences, let's take a look at how to interact with activated and triggered abilities. You can use spells like Stifle, Trickbind, or Disallow to counter these while they're on the stack. Counterspell and other effects that specifically target spells do not work, because these are not spells. Permanents like Elesh Norn, Mother of Machines, and Torpor Orb can turn off triggered abilities that trigger when something enters the battlefield. If an ability has a target, then the usual methods of protecting against targeted effects apply. See my video on protection spells for a full breakdown of how to deal with targeted effects. Let's sum it all up and then test our understanding. Activated abilities always contain a colon. They go on the stack, except for mana abilities. Counter them with effects like Stifle or Disallow. Shut off when this enters triggers with permanents like Norn or Orb. Or counter them with Stifle, Disallow, etc. Triggered abilities always contain the words when, whenever, or at. They go on the stack and can be also countered with effects like Stifle. Mana abilities are activated or triggered abilities that add mana to your mana pool and have no target. They don't use the stack. Think Mana Dorks and Rocks. I really like the concept of quizzes to help test understanding and apply what we've talked about. So we're going to do just that. I highly encourage you to go through your own cards and look at them with these lenses. It's one thing to watch a video and absorb some of the information, but when things will really click for you is when you start putting the pieces together by looking at your own cards and other cards in play. You'll be able to anticipate when others can use their activated and triggered abilities, and when you can use yours to get an edge. Pause the video if you need more time to think about the correct answer. Whenever a creature you control dies, each opponent loses 1 life. Activated or triggered ability. This is a triggered ability. It starts with whenever. Your opponent targets your enchantment with Beside You. Can you counterspell it in response? The answer is no. This is not a spell. The channel ability is an activated ability because it contains a colon. Can you activate the Great Henge to add 2 green mana and gain 2 life while Torpor Orb is in play? The answer is yes. Torpor Orb stops the triggered ability, but it does not stop you from using Henge's mana ability. True or false, removing a creature in response to its activated ability, going on the stack removes the ability from the stack. The answer is false. Once the ability has been put onto the stack, removing the creature will not remove its effect. True or false, you can use Stifle to counter an Arcane Signet, adding mana to its controller's mana pool. This is false. This is a mana ability that does not use the stack. It's your opponent's turn, and they have a Soul Warden in play. They have a token that enters the battlefield, and you want to stop the life gain trigger while it's on the stack. How do you do it? A. Cast a removal spell, targeting the Soul Warden in response to the trigger. B. Cast Deny the Witch, targeting the life gain trigger. C. Cast Squelch, targeting the life gain trigger. The correct answer is B. This is a triggered ability, so Deny the Witch is the only option here that can remove it from the stack. You have a Stormkiln Artist in play, and target your opponent's creature with Otawara. Does Stormkiln Artist trigger? And can your opponent play a Stifle in response? The answers are no and yes. This is not a spell. It's an activated ability, and that means that it cannot be countered with something like a counterspell, but can be countered with Stifle, Disallow, and other effects that target activated abilities. This is why the legendary lands with channel abilities are so powerful and pricey. They come into play untapped if you need a land drop. If you need to deal with a problem more than you need a land, then you can use their channel ability at instant speed. And because channeling is an activated ability, it's harder than spells to stop on the stack. Your opponent targets your commander with Vona's ability. Before it resolves, which of these could you deploy to save your commander? There might be multiple correct answers. A. Give your creature hexproof. B. Stifle the ability. C. Remove Vona before the trigger resolves. D. Cast Redirect, targeting the ability. Both A and B are correct. This is an activated ability that has a target. Hexproof makes your commander an illegal target when the ability tries to resolve. And Stifle counters activated abilities. Removing Vona in response doesn't work because the ability has already been put onto the stack. Redirect doesn't work either, because it can only deal with spells, and this is not a spell. Final question, true or false? Adric, Mathematical Genius, can be sacrificed to counter both of Incubation Druid's abilities. The answer is false. Incubation Druid's first ability is a mana ability, and mana abilities do not use the stack. Its second ability, however, is an activated ability. This does use the stack and can be responded to with Adric's own activated ability. How'd you do? If you need more work, go back, look at each question, and really try to digest the reasoning behind the answers. 2 key takeaways you can remember in your next game. Activated abilities separate their costs from their effects with colons. Triggered abilities use the words when, whenever, and at. I always make the disclaimer that there are edge cases and more complications we could get into. But you don't need to worry about the edge cases until you understand the basics, and the basics will help you in the majority of your interactions. Once you have them down, you'll have the toolkit you need to identify and solve the tricky situations when they do come up. Thanks for watching, and let me know if you have any questions.